Yes, I was most definitely the target audience for this show. I've wanted a Starfleet Academy series since I started watching Star Trek. So since I was 6, when they were talking about the Academy, I've always wanted to see one.
I mean, like Linda, teen dramas, things like that, 90210, I grew up on. That stuff is my vibe. So I was eager to see how that would mesh into the Star Trek universe.
I don't know, and Ellie, you and I have had loads of talks about this. I don't know how seriously I ever considered it would be the living witness Doctor. I think I just from the jump went, it's the Doctor.
I think when they first announced it, before they announced that it was going to be set in the 32nd century, I had this idea in my mind that we were going to see perhaps younger versions of legacy characters at the Academy.
Special thanks to our Patreon executive producer, Jonathan Capps, and our Patreon associate producers, Chris Knapp and Mark Zutkoff. Your leadership support helps keep the Transporter Room running at warp speed. And to all of our Patreon members at every level, we truly appreciate you. Your support helps power every episode, interview, and away mission. We couldn't do this without you. Greetings, everyone. I'm your host, Chris Garrish, joined today by my co-host, Linda Pages. Welcome to this special edition of the Transporter Room. Tonight, we are thrilled to be joined by 3 very special guests, Sean Farrick and Ellie Littlechild of Trek Culture, and John Orkilla from Screen Rant. Together, we're diving into our thoughts on the first season of Star Trek Starfleet Academy and its untimely cancellation after season 2. So buckle up as we beam into this exciting discussion and explore what it brought to the Trek universe. All right. So how's everybody doing today? This has just been my great day. So my laptop crashed literally 5 minutes before we were about to start doing this. And so I've had to pull out my MacBook from 2012 and run this recording. So, hey, at least I know my old MacBook is still capable of doing it, and other than my old...
Props to Apple.
Yeah, I guess props to Apple. But anyway, how's everybody doing today?
Doing good. Doing very well, considering the circumstances.
Yes, exactly.
Considering.
Yes, I agree. I understand.
On crap from MegaCon and sad about Starfleet Academy, but other than that, spring break's over and we're right back in the swing of things for the semester. So,
well, good. Yeah, some of y'all know what happened with me. So, but been a rough week as well. But we're going to do this, and we're going to get through this because we do need to talk about this series because, I'm not going to dive into the other end too quick, but it shouldn't have been canceled yet. But we'll get into that as we progress through this discussion today. So the way I discussed what we talked about is, I just wanted to get everybody's pre-release thoughts. Like, what were you even remotely expecting from this series, or what did you think they would do for us? And we're going to start with ladies first. So, Ellie, you're up first.
Okay. I think when they first announced it, before they announced that it was going to be set in the 32nd century, I had this idea in my mind that we were going to see perhaps younger versions of legacy characters at the Academy. And that excited me. And I thought that was maybe the direction we were going to go in. Then they announced that it was going to be in the 32nd century, and I thought, okay, that could be quite fun, quite exciting, but I wasn't really sure what to expect from it. Mm-hmm. I was maybe slightly concerned going in that it wasn't going to be my kind of vibe. I've spoken plenty of times on our channel about how, the kind of teen drama, high school drama settings have never really been my vibe, even when I was a teen, so I was slightly skeptical. Then they announced that Bob Picardo was going to be in it, and that was definitely a draw for me. Mm-hmm. I was very excited then. Then I was like, my interest was piqued and I was ready to go in. But I went in cautiously optimistic, but I didn't have high hopes going in, and I've made no secret of that. I wasn't sure going into it. My expectations were quite low.
Mm-hmm.
But that just meant that I was pleasantly surprised by what we then were given. And I think that's probably a better way to go in than going in with really high expectations and being disappointed, which has happened with other shows.
Yeah.
So on the whole, maybe my expectations weren't very high, but I think maybe that was a good thing then based on what we got.
True. Yeah. I'll give my point here in a few minutes, but Linda, how about yourself? Since you are a college kid in college, this is your target.
Yes, I was most definitely the target audience for this show. I've wanted a Starfleet Academy series since I started watching Star Trek. So since I was 6, and they were talking about the Academy, I've always wanted to see one. I definitely grew up watching Gilmore Girls and like Liv and Maddie and like kind of these like teen or college set, high school college setting shows, and always really Gossip Girl, and always really loved those shows. So I was really, really excited to see a crossover of that genre, which is probably what I'm watching if I'm not watching sci-fi or horror, and Star Trek. So I was really excited, and what I was expecting was a lot of Academy life. We're cramming for this exam and we're going out and we're stressed about our futures in Starfleet and kind of all the things I'm going through in college now, but just in the Star Trek universe. And so I was really, really excited about the show. I too thought that when it was initially announced that this is something that they were going to work on, I was also thinking it would be legacy characters at Starfleet. But I really, really love what we have. I wish that it had at least a 4-season run so that we could see our cadets graduate. But I'm really, really grateful that we're going to get the 20 episodes that we're eventually going to have. And I really enjoyed it. And I definitely think that it served its purpose. I think it got a lot of my generation into Star Trek, who otherwise probably would not have started watching maybe some of the classic Trek shows might now, because now they have an attachment to Starfleet Academy, and now since there are Discovery characters in Starfleet Academy, they might watch Discovery, and then that might lead to them watching other Trek series. So I definitely think it served its purpose, and I wish that they were continuing it.
I agree. John Orkilla.
Well, I mean, like Linda, teen dramas, things like that, 90210, I grew up on. That stuff is my vibe. So I was eager to see how that would mesh into the Star Trek universe. I took a wait and see approach to Academy. I did know it was going to be in the 32nd century and all that, which is not my favorite era of Star Trek, but I understood why they set it there. I knew some stuff about it about a year before it premiered. The main thing that I was aware of was that there was a mother-son drama. I didn't have any specifics, but when that was kind of explained to me, what it was going to be about, I was like, so that sounds a lot like Jack Crusher and Beverly Crusher to me. It didn't really turn out that way, but so that was kind of like the main thing I was worried about, because it sounded like it was going to be very, very focused on that one male character. And I guess if I had any concerns, it was like, well, I hope they don't make it all about one character and make it about the ensemble. But by episode 3, they really started to build out the ensemble, and then they did individual episodes to get to know every cadet. So that's basically how I approached it. I was very, very, very interested to see it. And the poster that everybody hated so much, I love that poster, because again, that played right to what I thought the show should be, which I guess was the opposite of what people wanted. But and from the show we got, I think it exceeded my expectations by a huge margin.
No, I have to agree with you as well. And so, Sean, how about yourself?
I'm in a very, very similar boat to John here. I think whether it was context clues or something, that very, very, very first announcement, I think the wording of the announcement, I was like, right, this is the 32nd century. And I know it was confirmed. It feels fairly quickly after that. I think it was the wording of it. It was like, oh, okay, well, it's been 100 years, so clearly. And then what were we? Were we season 3, between seasons 3 and 4 of Discovery, I think, when the announcement came out? Maybe it was a bit later than that. But certainly I was like, right, well, we're here. We've established this. I want to see more of this. I want to see more of any time period we're given. One day we'll get the Lost Era. But anyway. And then I just tried to keep an open mind, because there was also, in the context of this show being developed, there was so much going on in the franchise. You know, you had all of the debacle with Prodigy. You know, you then had, you know, what type of show was Picard going to be this year? You know, and
True.
then of course you had Strange New Worlds. There was so much going on, and you had then cancellations of other shows as well. So I feel like with the time that we had leading up to Academy, we had so much other things that were a point of focus as well, that it sort of felt like it went from announcement to teaser. No, that actually, the Entertainment Weekly, that article where you got the pictures for the first time, it felt like it was like blink and it happened. And as soon as I saw those first images from set, I think maybe I had worries, but they were certainly like, oh, if nothing else, I love the aesthetic of this show. But it was before I'd seen a frame of it, before I'd seen any, you know, I was like, oh, no, I like this. I like they're taking what I like from the 32nd century Starfleet and building on that. I feel like, now, correct me if I'm wrong, but did we get the Athena in the background of a poster before we got a picture of the Athena? I think we did.
I don't know.
I feel
It was
like, or no, do you
definitely
know
in
what
the
it
third
was?
poster. It was in the third poster they released.
Is that what it? Do you know what? Do you know what I'm thinking of? When they did, was it New York Comic Con, and they did that experience to the walkthrough, and there was pictures of it on the board, and of course they got posted online.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
Okay.
So I was like, you know, that's the ship, and then of course we got our lovely, you know, big shot of it. So going into it, I was excited, curious, and there were things I was just so excited. I mean, Holly Hunter, I was on board.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
she's Holly Hunter. You know what I mean? Gina Yashere, who I love as a stand-up comedian, similar to Ellie. I mean, Bob Picardo. I was like, great, cool. I don't know. And Ellie, you and I have had loads of talks about this. I don't know how seriously I ever considered it would be the Living Witness Doctor. I think I just from the jump went, it's the Doctor. You know,
yeah.
the Living Witness one would, you know, make as look, it would make as much sense as anything else. Technically, that one is still lost. I hope he's okay. You know, but yeah. So and then we got it. You know, I watched episode 1, took a break, went back. Then I watched the next 5, and I just really enjoyed what they were doing. I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I'm just sad this week. I've had a chance to sit on it now. You know, I have my thoughts, but yeah, because I really think they had the makings of a great show here.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I mean, and you know, and I was, you know, actually looking forward to, I don't know if I would say the Academy per se, but just the fact that we're getting another series because, you know, we didn't have anything really coming out. Now I was not surprised that it was the 32nd century because of Tilly, and because when she left Discovery, that was the whole thing, was she was going to go run the Academy. You know, but for me it was because, you know, we're getting another new show, and then finally, you know, Paramount started releasing the photos and trailers for it, and I thought, okay, this is going to be a little interesting because, you know, now we're getting to see, you know, the actual cast. And like I said at the beginning, of course, you know, the naysayers, they went immediately to, this is 90210 in space, and it was all based off that one stinking poster. And I thought, this is just
Just for the poster.
I was like, it was just a poster. You know, that's all it is. There's nothing else to it. It's just a poster. So like I said, I went in with an open mind, because that's how you have to approach these. Anything new. Doesn't matter if it's Star Trek series or not. You have to approach it with an open mind. Now there are times I would like, you know, maybe if we had done a little more teaching at times in the Academy, but you know, but then again, as a lot of us know, sometimes the best way to learn is by trial by fire, which, you know, these cadets absolutely got put through at times. And yes, I mean, hello, Holly Hunter, as Ray said, Paul Giamatti. Absolutely, I want to watch this with them. You know, and I just, you know, I really had no idea what to expect, but I will say this. I said this on our discussion when it was when Sean and John and I did one recently. I felt like they knocked the casting out of the park. You know, I didn't know who was playing Laura Thought. No clue. I did not know it was Gina Yashri at all. But the instant I heard that voice, I was like, "Oh, that's Kimmy from Bob Hart's Abishola," and I was sold after that because she was on there and she sounded the same. Like she, I was sounds the same. Her attitude was the same it was in that series that she was on. Just like how like she was the cadet master. And so anyway, it was that part I just love. And so, um, I, I mean, John, you said it very clear back when I think it was just on our one-on-one interview is that, and I'm going to quote you, as you said, the one thing that Star Trek fans hate is new Star Trek at times. And
it's always been the case. Historically, it's been the case. It's funny. William Shatner literally brought it up in his own tweets just yesterday.
Yes.
It's the cycle of it,
And I was actually, I just read those tweets this morning, and I was actually very happy with what his statements were about it. He wasn't against it at all. So, I feel like this was the series, and now we'll move into the episodes. But because this, I felt like as a series, I thought they were going down the right path. Now I know a lot of people that I talked to felt that the first episode was very dark, and rightfully so, because we did not know anything about the burn really, and they gave us that information, so it made it a lot easier for me to understand why Ake did what she did, because the Federation and Starfleet were rebuilding themselves. It was kind of every man or every civilization for themselves at that point in time in the first episode, and so I got it. Because I like I said, I know someone who basically they checked out after the first 20 minutes. And I was like, you can't do that. You've got to go through there. And very fast, it went from that to her being on Bajor. Oh my God. I was like, really? We're going straight to Bajor? Oh, I just felt, I mean, for the DS9 people out there, that was the best thing ever. And we learned about her and Vance's relationship, and I appreciate it. And as the series progressed, I made other comments about this. I started seeing her and Vance's relationship or friendship, honestly, just like Jadzia and Cisco, because of the age. I mean, it even worked out. She was 422, Jadzia was 300 and something. So she was the old man. Well, Ake was could have been the old man. So I like that part when we start seeing that relationship with them. But so Linda, what did you think about the first episode?
It was dark, but I thought it worked with the series. Star Trek has always reflected the current political and social climate. So I think that the first episode, starting with a mother doing something out of desperation for her child that broke the law, ended with disaster, and being separated from her child, was very relevant. And so I think Star Trek is always telling important and relevant stories, and that has not stopped with Starfleet Academy. So I'm choosing my words carefully.
No, understandably.
But yes, I think that was a very apt way to begin this series about this generation, and this juxtaposition of there's this horrible thing happening, there's these kids of the same age, and some of them are living with their parents as admirals in Starfleet and moving to space station. Some of them have just kind of come into the world, and some of them have been starving and in prisons their whole lives. and they all end up in the same place. And but they've all gone through the burn and this time of chaos together. I look around at my friends and my peers at my college, and I see kind of a similar collection of really different stories, but we were all affected by COVID. All of us have gaps in our knowledge from high school that we needed for our careers now that we're still working on, right? Like basic things that we never learned because we were doing online school, or gaps in social skills and things like that because we missed those years.
I couldn't find my school years on a map at this point, so
yeah, some of us our school years are way behind us.
Well, I think this is a very relevant story, though, right?
Correct.
Like they're all dealing with this shared trauma, and also it affected them all in really different ways. My parents were healthcare workers. I had a different experience with COVID than some of my peers did, or some of my classmates who had family members die from COVID, or had, you know what I mean? Like we all had different, we all have just different experiences with it. And so I think that the way they executed that was so good. And when they were talking about the burn, and when the adults were like, we don't know how to handle this either. Like we don't know how to help them through this. Like it made me tear up a lot of the time, because it was like, I've had these conversations with my teachers and with my parents, and it was just very, I keep using the word relevant. I don't know what else to say. It was just very easy to connect to.
Well, I like that. I never even, again, I never thought about that. How for you, the burn is kind of like your COVID back. You know, it was the destruction of everything. And wow, I like that. I like how you say it is very relevant. I mean, wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, Linda, I've never really thought about it from that perspective before. That's really interesting.
No, it really is.
When we watch, when we watch Star Trek, when we watch anything, we filter it through our own life experience. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that actually illustrates the value of the show in terms of how it reflects the generation that it represents, which, and COVID as a parallel to the burn, and how that limited a generation of people in Starfleet, is actually a really, really compelling perspective that I just hadn't heard before. That's really interesting.
I hadn't either. Wow. All right. Trek Culture Group. Who wants to go first?
I'll go.
Ellie's got notes.
No, I just adding on that. It's so interesting. I wish that, maybe Linda and I should have spoken a little bit more throughout Academy, because it's so interesting having that perspective.
Yeah.
Because, between myself, Sean, and Tom discussing it, none of us are necessarily the target audience. And so I completely missed that as well. And if I'd have had that mindset, maybe I would have looked at things slightly differently. But I'm just going in as, from my own experiences and just judging it on at face value from what I'm reading in it. So I really, really liked the opening 20 minutes of the episode, because, as I say, I was skeptical going in, and was concerned that it was going to feel very high school drama for me. So I was really surprised and pleasantly surprised that when we saw the opening, we were right in the action.
Yeah.
We had this really gripping story and this through line that was going to continue throughout the series, that wasn't just focusing on the cadets at the academy, but there was a wider picture as well, and there was drama to it, there was action to it, and it was something that you could kind of connect to and be intrigued by throughout the show. So I really enjoyed that. And then obviously we then got introduced to the rest of the cadets and the characters, and I enjoyed the introduction of each character as well. I think that worked. Kind of splitting the episode into the introduction of the wider picture, and then the introduction to the cadets. And I really love seeing Nala Ake as a captain. Will come as no surprise. Linda and I are big fans of Janeway, and so I really
Yeah.
really I really enjoyed seeing this.
I never knew.
Female. It's a mystery. I really enjoyed seeing this female captain who had this kind of maternal side in a similar way to what Janeway had. And, she's a very different captain to Janeway in many ways, but there's also this kind of element to her that's similar as well. And I think seeing those opening 20 minutes and seeing what she used to be like and what she became and how that affected her. I think that for me was something that I was gripped by. That was my draw, was those sorts of things. So even though the show as a whole was not necessarily aimed at me as the target audience, I found things in it that I was engaged with and just kind of was drawn to those parts and just clung to those elements in each episode. So, you know, there were parts of each episode that I did really enjoy, even if there were other parts that I didn't. And episode 1 was a strong start. You know, I went in with low expectations and episode 1 sold it.
Agreed. And I mean, some of us didn't know what to expect because we had not had, well, actually, technically, even everybody that had the screeners had no idea what to expect. I mean, we were going in, it was a blank slate. We were going in not knowing what was going to happen. And I'll let John and John speak in a second, but I mean, I didn't know anything about Anala, obviously, and I really liked her. I mean, I know there was a whole, I know we're going to get a lot of probably just hate for this, but everybody that just absolutely like, that's not how you sit in the captain's chair. It's like, oh, come on. So, okay, I will admit, and I think I admitted this very much before, initially, that was my very, very, very first knee-jerk reaction was like, why is she sitting like that? But thank you, Strange New Worlds, for introducing us into Pelia. Because for my mind, I realized, wait a second, the Lanthanites are just so laid, the only two that we now know are the most laid-back culture because they lived for so long. I mean, Pelia is 5,000 years old, you know? And so I was like, wait a second, she's cool. She doesn't, I mean, she's doing her job. They're on a 13-hour trip or 15-hour trip. She's just relaxing. She's just chill. It's not so. And as we saw when she had to be a captain and do what she had to do, she was on it. So yes, yes, I was like, oh my God. But then I thought about, okay, all the little things that Pelia has done. I mean, all their antiques. Well, some of those are not really, some of them are even antiques for us, but and some of them are still today. But I was like, okay, I'm cool with that because that is just how Lanthanites act. They're not being disrespectful. They're just kind of like, this is what it is. It's life. And so, yeah, that helped me wipe out that little, hubbub that everybody had about that. So, sorry to interrupt, but I just had to get that one out. But we were trying to propel it. I mean, okay, so, Sean Farrick.
I loved the first episode. I was going to say I love kids these days, but I don't like the phrasing.
Oh no!
But
I have to bleep that out. No.
I thought it was a great episode. I thought it worked the balance of action and comedy very well. And never had a problem. I love the thing. Everyone is kind of talking about, how she sits in the chair. I love she adjusted the height. We've never seen that in Star Trek before. Which I loved because all captains are exactly the right height for the captain's chair. So I love that. But also, I mean, yes, it became an action adventure episode, but it wasn't in the beginning. So yeah, she was laid back. She was happy out.
Exactly. They were going back to Earth. They were just on a mission back to Earth. That's all it was.
Well, I also liked very much how the way that they introduced the different characters. I enjoyed that. Like, Jaden's just walking by and is in, right, cadet, drop your bag on his back. Enjoyed that. There was so much humor.
It was so good.
And Rufus Wainwright. Because I think, now maybe I'm going to be honest, this might be an invented memory, right? But I think a part of me has been every time we get a first episode of Star Trek since Discovery, I'm like, now, are they going to do a Faith of the Heart? Are they going to do it as either a troll or as this has become a beloved thing? And I think they had their cake and ate it too with Academy. Because they did have a traditional theme and opening credit sequence, but they also managed to scoot in the San Francisco song, which I have listened to on repeat since it was included in the episode, because it was a beautiful moment and it captured everything, not just about the end of the episode, but this feeling of we're not just back to Starfleet, we're back to Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
You know, after, because it had been several months since season 3 of Strange New Worlds had finished. And yeah, it was just this lovely feeling of coming home. And I have to believe that that's what the intention was. And I think they nailed it.
No, agreed.
And yeah, overall, I think it was a great introduction to the season. And there's actually, funny if you mentioned that, there's a lot of people have said, oh, I checked out before the end of the first 20 minutes. And I went, well, then you missed the episode. You watched the cold open, and, you know, like, oh, anyway, you know,
Yeah.
I was a bit like, right, you didn't then watch the episode, because it changes, tonally, it changes, like, completely after that. And all of the humor and all of the warmth, it follows on from that. It's important establishment. I do think it was needed. And, you know, we got our introduction to Anisha, we got Noose Braka, and yeah, personally, I love it. And also, from the jump, Charles Vance was used better in Academy than he ever was in Discovery.
Oh, I agree. I mean, I think you're right. He was there.
The Dadmiral is in.
Yes. John?
It's funny, you know, this series premiere was only 2 months ago, but it feels almost like a million years ago now, because so much has happened. I mean, I actually, it's listening to everybody's thoughts, I have not thought about the pilot in so long. But now that I am thinking about it, what strikes me, and I do think actually it's the strongest of the Paramount Plus Star Trek pilots, all told, if you rank them, which I did. But
you ranked them?
I did. But looking back, thinking about the pilot now, you know, after the whole season's over, what strikes me, as I recall it, was how much was planted, all the seeds that were planted that paid off throughout the season. Things like how Darum purposely bumped into Jaden and instigated something, but why did he do that? Why did he purposely steal his binoculars? And how all that pays off later on when you find out what the binoculars mean, and then you see how their relationship develops, and also the way, because I believe Alex Kurtzman and Noga Landau spoke about this when they were talking about the finale during press, which is how they had to completely revamp the finale from what it was supposed to be, and they just pulled so much. They pulled so much stuff from the pilot to pay off, especially in the relationship between Noose Braka and Anisha and Caleb and Nala, like that I was going to say triangle, but that's not the shape. But how all that pays off at the end. And if you look now, as I'm thinking about it, looking back towards the beginning, how well it all kind of blends together. It's actually a beautifully told story, from the start all the way to the end.
No, I agree. And which then it led us into beta test, because now we actually get to start we're starting to see that bubbling up of the relationship. Well, first off, the cadets are starting to meld a little bit together finally. They're still being, cadets, they're being 20 somethings. And I mean, we were all of us have been 20 something. Some of us are 20 something right now. And so, they bring in the Beta Zeds. We always have to get that right there. And, it was nice to see them, bring in a race that we were familiar with and learn again what happened to them as well during the burn. And, they brought us into Rima and her brother, Occam, which, poor Occam, they really did forget about him as the series progressed, unfortunately, I feel like. But Linda, what did you think about beta tests number 2?
I really liked beta test because it was more of like, this is life at the Academy, which is what I was really hoping to see out of this series. I loved the Betazoids. I loved the emphasis on kind of rebuilding relationships with alien species post-burn. And again, it was this thing of like, we're back at the academy after this series of really tragic, traumatic events, but we're also teenagers, so we have crushes on each other, and there's a lot of tension, and like, you know what I mean? Like it's both happening at the same time, which again was relatable and realistic. So I, so I really I enjoyed it. I think that episode one was a I agree. I think it was one of the best pilots in all of Star Trek. But I also just enjoyed watching episode two because it was just like this is what I wanted to see. I just wanted to see them just being teenagers in
Yeah.
their early 20s.
Well, and I loved it when, when she's like, "You're literally on the fence, Caleb." When he's trying to get Academy, I just like, oh my god.
Side note, but the introduction of holograms in this in the episode. I have so many questions that they didn't answer that I would like them to, because a huge plot in Voyager was the EMH, kind of owning his sentience and his personality, and advocating for himself to be considered, I guess for lack of a better word, human, an individual. And now we have like secure holographic security and holographic like guides that can be turned on off at will. And I have a lot of questions. There was an episode of Voyager that kind of set it up as though the other EMHs that were like working in the mines, that they were kind of going to start a revolution and maybe rally and fight for their rights to their sentience. So I'm wondering if that was suppressed. I don't understand why like the doctor now is sentient and considered a person, and Sam is considered a person, but these holograms aren't. So I don't, or didn't seem to be. It seems to be very easily programmable and kind of malleable. So I have a lot of questions about that. Do they still have holodecks? What's the ethical?
That's a valid point, because that's a good. I like that, because I hadn't even thought about that, but you're right, because Sam and the Doctor are basically individuals, but then you have those other holograms, like you're saying, are back to being a tool. Huh. All right. That's a very interesting concept. I not see. All right, Ellie.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that either. See, so many questions now.
God dang.
I will say from this episode that, in a similar way to Vance being used better, seeing Tig Notaro in this episode immediately, Jet Reno was used so much better in this series than she ever was in Discovery. It just suits her character so much better to kind of be sassy to cadets as opposed to being sassy to her superiors. I think that worked much better. There was a much better dynamic. But I will say this one did concern me slightly, in as much as it kind of followed that structure that I was not hoping for, which I see why it does appeal to certain people. It's just, teen romance is not it's just not my vibe. It's just not for me. So when we got to episode 2 and I was like, oh great, this is what I was hoping wasn't going to happen, and we're basically going to watch these two teens fall in love or dance around each other. In fact, I didn't even think they were going to get together straight away. I was like, we're going to have them dancing around each other, because that feels like the direction this is going to go. So that part of it had me slightly concerned about where the show was going to be going. But it's definitely an episode that when you watch it a few more times, you can definitely appreciate the negotiations and the kind of the whole Betazoid, Beta Z situation, and that element of it definitely worked for me. I think on first viewing, my judgment was clouded so much by just the teen romance element of it that I kind of forgot to take in the rest of it. But I'm kind of glad that episodes 1 and 2 were released together, so you got to see a combination of what this show was going to be. Because if I'd just seen this episode, I think I would have maybe not been so inclined to want to watch on. But not because it wasn't good, it's just not my cup of tea.
Correct. Exactly.
Well, and then that's the difference. I don't hate it. It's just not for me.
Correct. Well, and speaking of the relationships, because even at this point, if I remember correctly, we were bouncing back and forth between he was, Caleb and Genesis, and then it became then Caleb and Tarima. Because even at that point, they're still. I mean, I even because you would think, I kind of thought maybe they were going to go that route with him and Genesis, but then they flipped it. So yeah, I see what you're saying. They they were doing the let's see here, insert Dawson's Creek, One Tree Hill type shows. It's I'm not gonna lie, I watched all those. So back in the day, so I get it. But now I see what you're saying on that one as well. And I don't understand why people were so. And I made this a question for the group on this. As we've seen in previous versions of Trek, the Beta Zeds could talk telepathically, and they didn't do that this one. And I've always wondered about that because the people were, again, there was a lot of naysayers about why are they using sign language. I do remember hearing some about that as well, which I didn't think I did not even think anything of it. I just thought that's what it just didn't even like register for me until I started seeing, the comments online. I was like, oh, well, whatever. But yes, no, as back to the teen drama romance, yes, it was pretty evident in this episode.
Okay, the sign language thing.
Uh-oh.
This was annoying me. The discussion around this was annoying me. He can read other people's minds. They can't read his. She's translating what he's saying and thinking to them, not the other way around. I was so annoyed that nobody seems to understand that. Where did media literacy go? We can't possibly all be this dumb. It's just like it was really pissing me off. That was such a big discussion. Yes.
There's a lot of willful dumbness, a lot of willful stupidity in the zest to criticize the show for whatever reason. Like Klingons don't smile. Look at this Klingon smiling. Like, you can go through every episode of Star Trek from the very first appearance, and every Klingon smiles.
Yes,
they love the smile. They love the party. They love the drink. Yeah, they kill too. It's like
everyone else is a snowflake who you got your pennies in a bunch over a piece of fabric.
I know. Well, oh yeah.
Like, let's all be so real right now. Like, you're upset because an actor or a piece of fabric on a TV show, an actor who's probably about half your age.
Yeah.
So,
well, and I actually like both. I like your discussion. About that. Like I said, I didn't think anything of it. They were doing it so that we can understand what was actually being said.
Also, it seems like they don't have the same kind of mind reading abilities that they did. Like, it seems like maybe they can do that less now. So maybe he genuinely can't, like as well. Maybe he can get, like, emotions and stuff. But
800 years, so who knows what happens? I mean, it's exactly. I mean, I have said that numerous times. Everybody on this screen has said it's 800 years. Things change. Yeah, I don't know. What is your feelings on this one, Sean?
I mean, myself and Ellie have laughed with this. So in our ranking of the episodes, we both have beta test quite low. Yeah. But the way I have it is that I just really liked a lot of the other episodes a little bit more. I mean, I am here for the diplomacy that comes with Star Trek. Mm-hmm. Like that, I love that. Put me in a room with people talking about things in Star Trek, and I'm happy.
Yeah,
that's what I like. Mm-hmm. So I really enjoyed that. I really like Zoe Steiner as Terima because that is a hard role.
Oh, yeah.
Because you know straight away it's going to fall into the female love interest role, right? Even though it's more than that, but you know it's going to be boxed into that so quickly. And I think even in this first episode, she brought so much to it. There's a comfort and there's a playfulness to it that I think comes across really, really well.
Yeah.
And I love as well that, because again, we'd only just met Caleb. And so we don't really get Caleb. So there's still that kind of gruffness to him. And she's having none of it.
Oh.
She gives as good as she gets, which again, really good in establishing that relationship between the two of them from the jump. Like, I think it's about halfway through the episode. He snaps at her and she says, "Yeah, I'm out of here." I'm like, yeah, fair play. I like this as a reaction. This is good. And there was actually, funny enough, completely separate from this, that I was watching this and I thought there was an Easter egg where I thought, is this one Easter egg, if not too far, then too soon? And it's the whales.
Oh yeah.
And I thought, like, I was like, I mean, it's episode 2. And wasn't it nice of those whales to hang out just by the window? You know, something like that. But that's it. Already, I was at, I guess you could call it nitpicking.
Yeah.
Rather than, here is a glaring issue I have with this show. Nothing like that.
No.
I did pick up on what people were saying, obviously, about the sign language and telepathy. Moreover, I thought, I was kind of reading people going like, that Deanna is empathic rather than kind of fully telepathic. Obviously, she is seen using telepathy, but with her mother.
Yeah.
Whereas other like full betazoids are just that bit more telepathic. So yes, I did. I was kind of okay. I was kind of following that conversation there. No issue with the sign language.
No.
My biggest gripe wasn't the sign language. It was the fact that her eyes weren't entirely black. I was like, what happened to betazoids?
So that one is my contribution to it's been 800 years.
Yeah, I mean.
So yeah, because when we talk about Jaden with a bit more detail, there is bits that just like I don't have a problem because there's been 800 years, and this show, one of the things it leads with is interspecies breeding, which is a very cold description for when some people get together and they have a nice time and they have some wine. But this idea of what something looks like in the 24th and 25th century is not necessarily what it will look like in the 32nd.
Correct.
I'm sure humans, if we survive, won't look the same in the 32nd century as we do now. I know evolution takes longer than that. I'm talking about good old fashioned when two people like each other and there's but yeah, so I'm so sorry about the tangents that I will go down on this episode. But overall, really, really liked it. And I love, again, very Star Trek solution. What do? I know. Instead of going back to Paris, love Paris, put the seat of government on Beta Z. Very Star Trek way of dealing with that. Compromise, conversation.
Well, and I'm going to interject for some. You said, species there. I mean, it totally reminds me when Captain Archer asked Daniels, "Are you human?" And he goes, "More or less." I mean,
I really like that.
I loved it. Yeah. And so, John Walker, do you have anything to add to beta test for us?
I mean, looking back on it again, like one of the things that stands out to me in my memory of it now is how in the beginning, like Caleb and Jet Reno did not get along because she asked him who he was, and then and this was in Caleb's early Chaos Boy phase at the Academy, and then he goes to Nala and tries to get her fired, and then obviously Nala doesn't fire her, and how it pays off later on in the finale where Reno talks Caleb off a ledge, basically. It just the symmetry of all that and how it all pays off is really great. I want to echo Sean's thoughts about Zoe Steiner, who I think did a fantastic job with a very, very difficult role, the love interest / manic pixie dream girl kind of role. Very hard to do. And, she had to convey so many different aspects of her character. Plus the underlying fact, as we find out later on, as we get to know her better, is that A, she's dangerous, and B, she thinks she's dangerous, which is two different things in a way. And how that basically affected her, everything she did, from choosing to go to the War College instead of Starfleet Academy because she wanted to master certain skills for herself, and then being yanked out of the War College and put in the Starfleet Academy, and having that choice taken from her, and the relationship with Caleb playing all the way through. I think it's a really good episode. Is it the best one of the season or one of the best? I don't think so. I mean, things got really, really great later on as the season progressed. But I mean, I thought it was pretty strong. And introducing the whales never bothered me. I love the whales. Like you can put whales in anything as far as I'm concerned.
Well, those are the George. That's George and that's George and Gracie's offspring. I mean, it really is.
Possibly.
It's
It would have to be, right? I mean, George and Gracie are the only two whales. Everything's their offspring.
Yeah, they're all their
in a way.
And Jillian. Let's not forget Jillian.
Well, yes,
that's true.
True.
But Jillian was 800 years ago now from this point.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's been, so and just to add into the Zoe Steiner love here. Oh my God. She is the sweetest individual. Oh, getting to meet her on the cruise. She's was so nice and just sweet and just, I'm glad that just the tangent, but I'm glad that her and Gina got to be on there because they had just finishing season 2 and got to spend, I think they only got 3.5 days or with all of the 3,000 Star Trek fans. And so they had a blast on that ship. So I'm just going to add that in before I move on. I just had to say that about those two because they are, I can't wait to meet them again one of these days. We got lucky myself and Allison got very lucky to interview the writer of Vox and Excelso, Eric Glover. And that was, I was, when that episode first started, I was a little worried because I was like, oh my God, his dad is a total jerk. I was so thankful how that turned out. So, I guess really just, for everyone just want to give your overall opinion on Vox and Excelso real quick. We'll start with Linda.
I don't think I've made it that much of a secret that Klingons are not my favorite Star Trek species, and Klingon episodes are historically my least favorite Star Trek episodes. That being said, this was my favorite Klingon episode, I think, we'd seen. I think, because I really liked the plot that was happening at the Academy as well. I loved this, again, relevance to today's day and age, right? Like, he wants to initiate, or he being Jaden wants to initiate the conversation because he thinks it should be discussed. It's going to be discussed anyway, so he thinks we might as well discuss it in an academic setting. Like, let's have a real discussion about it. Like, you want to talk about it in the halls, you want to decide for me how I should feel about this. You have your own perspectives on my culture and on my family and on my feelings. Well, then let's debate it. Let's talk about it, while also feeling like it shouldn't be his responsibility to speak on behalf of all Klingons, and it shouldn't be, it kind of falls to him to speak for his entire species. And so I really liked that, just that take on the situation. I liked that they portrayed that. And I also liked that the kind of twist, I guess, at the end where his dad actually wasn't as evil as we thought he was. So, yeah.
No, I thought he was. I was so thankful they did that at the very end, at least for me. And I don't know about like Ellie, Sean, John. What was y'all's take on this episode, real quick?
I am similar to Linda in that Klingon episodes aren't necessarily my favorites, but this was my favorite episode of the entire season.
Oh,
of
really?
Academy. I think this was the best example of what Academy could be in terms of combining academic study and lessons and learning to be a Starfleet officer with the kind of the bigger picture and looking at the wider world of Star Trek and combining that with the Klingons and how they were affected post-burn and it being a more kind of diplomatic thing. I think there are some episodes where, maybe it falls closer into being teen drama. Some episodes where it feels like we're watching more like an episode of Discovery than an episode of Academy. Whereas this episode, I think, was a really good combination of the two and showcased what the potential of what this show could be, especially if it was given more of a chance. But sad times. But for me, I really enjoyed this episode. I liked the subverting of expectation in that Jaden was actually against the Federation aid when everyone assumed that he would be for it because he was in the Federation or in the Academy. So I like that it didn't necessarily go down the most predictable route, and that made it more interesting to watch. And I think that particularly Kareem DNA did a really good job in this episode.
Agreed. No, I agreed. Sorry. I'm sorry, I keep on interrupting. John, would you got a quick little insight on it real quick?
No, I thought this was the first great episode of the show. When the first time I saw it, I thought like the episode was phenomenal. I thought the writing was great. I thought the Klingon solution to the Klingon problem was so well done, so well thought out. And then the faux war that got the Klingons their home world. I thought, that was so brilliantly done. I mean, when I first saw this episode, I thought like this is the best episode of the season. I couldn't possibly get any better, and then it actually did. But this was the episode. This is the breakthrough episode for me that showed me that this was going to be a great show.
Mm-hmm. Good. Yeah, no, I agree. And then we get from this episode to the next one. Oh my goodness. So for all of our DS9 fans, Series Acclamation Mill, that was probably my favorite one of all of them, because, and I'm going to just lead with this because I had been, several people that I've talked to said, you're going to like this episode. You're going to like this episode. You're going to love it. It's the best one or whatever. I'm like, okay, it's the DS9 one. But nobody would give us any information. And then I started seeing Tawny dropping pictures online with Benjamin Sisko. I'm like, so now all of our speculation. I'm also a member of the Seventh Rule, so recording with Sirach on a regular basis, and so we're like, okay, what are they going to do? Are they going to pull off the absolute miracle of miracles and be able to get Avery to come back? And when she posted a picture of that, I was like, oh my God. And so then a group of us started speculating, well, is it going to be Avery? And then we're like, well, maybe they'll bring Sirach back somehow. And then, oh my God, there was freaking Sirach freaking Lofton on the screen again as Jake Sisko.
And we had like a 20-minute discussion with him at Star Trek Orlando about how excited we were for Starfleet Academy. He was like, yeah, no, it's going to be great.
Yeah. Well, no. And so I started telling some rumors. So I started going back and looking like, okay, were there any times when we had to cancel all of a sudden one of our recordings? Because I really was like, who is in this dang episode? And then bam, there he is. And of course, then we all got to do a special episode free for all with him to talk about that. And there was, if you go watch that one, everybody was just so in tears. I mean, oh my God. Yeah. So that was, for me, that was probably my favorite one because it was the love letter. It was the neat letter, what we needed to DS9. They didn't screw up the ending of Sisko. And it just, okay. Enough fanboying from me on that one. Anybody else wanted to talk about it? You go right on ahead.
I'm jumping in. All right, Series Acclamation Mill, because I was watching it with my partner, and he was just like, "Are you crying? Shut up." Yes, I was. And I did not say shut up because everyone should cry. It's good fun. Mm-hmm. I just thought it was fabulous.
Yeah.
And yes, I am with a large portion of the internet where I was like, this is an interesting way to start an episode, but also because we'd already established at this point that Sam was an unusual character, so I just kind of went with it. And very quickly then you see that it is going to be a stylized episode. That was fine. Because I just love saying his name. The fact that Chiwetel Ejiofor guest stars in a vocal cameo and he's not even the most surprising bit is great. The fact that it's just a fantastic episode. And I just love that he is a Trek alum. I just thought it was fun. We had Jackie Cox. I've been a fan of her since Drag Race, so that was fun. Loved the fact that drag queen's still very much going in the 32nd century. Very, very happy about this. I still think, Sam, absolutely wrong for that one war college cadet who was in the wrong place at the wrong time and gets chucked out of the bar. I was like, what did she do on you? Whatever about Zolo, but what did she do on you?
Yeah.
Anyway. But yes, I think, and I spoke about, this was an episode where, because we are the people that we are, and we sit there with the magnifying glasses and everything, this was an episode where I loved it. Knowing as much about, kind of the background side of Star Trek as we do, I was kind of like, we were looking close, going like, a couple of details, right? Okay, that family tree is a bit interesting, things like that. So that was one of the first examples where I just went, this is an episode where the writer and the set dresser were not in the same room at the same time.
Yeah.
Which you wouldn't expect them to be either. To be very clear about that. And that's not a case of fault. Anyway, again, but this is the nitpicky stuff that we get into. When it came to the end, I saw the episode before I knew about the production of the episode, so I was just at the floods of tears hearing Avery's voice.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And the way they teased us with that camera pan around Carice Brooks, and I was like, he's not going to be standing
I
there.
know.
There's no, they're not. That's it. And what they did, she stood up and walked away, and was like, I thought it was beautiful. So this is then when I'm actually glad I know as much about Avery Brooks's journey with Star Trek as I do, to know that he was involved in the production.
Yes.
That to me made this that bit more special.
Correct.
And I just thought that was fabulous.
Yeah.
He provided that recording. Was it recorded special for this? No, that doesn't make it any less special. And I love that Sirach was the actor they brought back. That one worked. I had a bit of a this is cool moment with the Tawny revelation. That was fun, but no, like seeing Sirach was wonderful, and that both scenes really between him and Carice. But hearing Avery's voice after, because I did think, and Ellie, you and I have talked about this, I did think that you're not getting Avery Brooks back.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. And I do think, and this is where myself and Chris spoke about this as well, if there is a bittersweet feeling to this, for me, this episode has closed the door on there being a Cisco follow-on. Yeah. Whether it be, any, it's not just, look at Lower Decks. We got Kira, we got Quark. So it's not to say that we won't ever see something in DS9 again, but this to me closes the door on the Cisco story.
I have to agree with you. Totally agree. Yeah, no, I held into tears until they played until the very end. And soon as the DS9 theme song came on, I was done. I held it in, but I was done after that. So, this is my favorite. That was my favorite episode. And so, if anybody else wants to talk, go right on ahead. If not, we will power on through real quick, because I know we're getting close to time here.
The only thing I'll say about this is I have not finished Deep Space Nine, and so when I started, he ascended, and I was like, "What the hell happened?" So I had to go back and research. And I was like, "What the hell are you talking about?" So
true.
I did have to pause it and then do a little deep dive and then come back but the Dax reveal at the end was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was great. Well, I know, but so that we can not be here for 2 hours, I would say let's just go ahead and have everybody just give me your wrap up. Last little bit, any other nitpicks? Because I do have one more nitpick I do want to bring up here before we're done. But just give me your overall of the last few episodes and with where we're going now. And I'm going to start with Mr. John Orchiola.
Well, I thought the season ended very, very strong. Again, like looking at how well everything that was planted in the beginning of the season paid off in terms of the major storylines within the major characters. We did not get some stuff, but you can't have everything. We never got a whole lot of answers about the Darsha. We still don't know much about them. We don't know. We have a lot of questions about the Keonians, but that's fine. That's what season 2 and theoretically what should have been season 3 and 4 were supposed to be for. But the episode 6 to me was really like the beginning of the big push towards the finale, because episode 6 was absolutely phenomenal. Also in my viewpoint, setting up Noose Bracca attacking J19 Alpha and stealing the Omega 47. That's a lot of numbers and letters to kind of to remember. But and then the Jonathan Frakes episode, which I thought had just about everything you could want in an episode, just in terms of the comedy and the action and the drama of it all. And then I thought the finale was great. I thought the finale was excellent. Here's the thing. I judge Star Trek finale not so much by plot or everything, although the gold standard is always going to be all good things. But I judge it by how I feel at the end.
Mhm.
And at the end of the finale, with the Rufus Wainwright song and everybody getting their happy ending, especially Caleb, who deserved a happy ending.
Yeah.
I felt great. I felt really great about the future. I felt really great about the show. I just love the characters so much. I loved where they ended. I was looking, I was looking, and I am looking forward to seeing them come back. It's one of those weird things. Where like, we know the show's canceled, and so we have that mindset. We have the mindset where like, oh God, the show's dead, but it's not dead yet. We still actually have another season to go. We still have, I guess, what's now the second half of the story still to come. So there's still all that to look forward to. It's hard to separate that from the feeling of loss of what we're not going to get.
Yeah.
But we do still have all this stuff still to come and to look forward to. And that's kind of where I'm leaving it in terms of how I feel. Like, when the cancellation was announced, my first reaction, if you go through the 5 stages of grief, and I don't know what all 5 are, by the way, but my first reaction was acceptance. I went right to acceptance because kind of saw it coming.
Yeah.
All the signs were there. And then I cycled to anger, and there's a lot of anger for a while, and then sadness, and then I'm kind of just in the balance of those two. 48 hours after hearing that the show's canceled, but I mean, I don't think the show could have ended more strongly than it did for season 1.
Cool. I have to agree with you on that, Sean.
I agree. I thought episode 10 was great. I thought episode 9 was it suffered a little bit from being a clear part 1 of 2. So I think when I'm doing my rewatch, I'll just make sure I watch both together. That's the worst I have to say about it. I really enjoyed it because obviously episodes 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Of that, 6 is probably my top one of that bunch because Paul Giamatti and Holly Hunter. Like their exchanges in Come Let's Away are, as we were saying before, if they're submitting anything for Emmy nominations for acting, that's the episode to go with.
Yeah.
I think they're fabulous. Paul is great. Holly is so good in how she reacts in that. This is 2 heavy hitters showing us how it's done, basically.
Oh, yeah.
And then just, like the rest of it, looking forward into season 2, what I would like to see is I want to see Genesis get her own episode. I feel she was a little bit shortchanged by having to share Cosine with Darum's story. So I think both of them definitely strong enough characters to have an episode to themselves. And I think sort of a similar thing in episode 8. I thought the Terima storyline, I really enjoyed it. I've spoken about this before. I don't have the history with that play that I think it is something that is very, very well known in the United States. It is known here, don't get me wrong. It wasn't part of our curriculum. So I feel like the writer really likes to play Our Town, which is great and cool.
So did Mary Wiseman. It's one of the reasons why they selected it.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then there we go. That makes sense. Okay. And then I thought, like Mary Wiseman, I thought that was a good use of Tilly. I've said before, and I will say again that I don't think Tilly particularly did anything Reno couldn't have done, but that doesn't mean I wasn't delighted to have Mary Wiseman back in that episode. So that was a lot of fun. The one where it's funny, the largest amount of time that was given the shortest amount of screen time is the 17 years on Cask. So I would hope, and I assume we will get, if not flashbacks to that, then at least a bit more of the Doctor and Sam relationship in season 2, because where it fell in the season, they just didn't have time to explore that as much as I would like. They only had 2 episodes left, so I do think that we will see something of that in season 2. But yeah, overall, I mean, I thought it was a banger of a season. I'm with you, John. We've spoken about this. I'm not sure. I felt some feelings on Monday, and yeah, as anyone who saw our news video saw, there's edits in the video, but shock is not one of the feelings. I'm sad to say it, but I'd be lying if I said I was shocked. I'm sad.
Yeah.
And I do think they jumped the gun. I really do. But I think this is what myself and Ellie were talking about earlier on as well. Overall, I think viewership it must be part of the decision, you know. But I also, to me, with the cancellation of Academy, that's all of Secret Hideout's Star Trek obligations now fulfilled.
Right.
And I leave that thought with you.
Yeah. Let's leave that thought with us there. All right. Miss Ellie.
Yeah, I mean, similar to what's already been said. I mean, episode 6, I think, was really strong. I liked the high stakes of the episode, and I feel like it really got the momentum of the show going. I did then feel that episode 7 and 8 kind of took a bit of a dive in terms of the momentum had built, and then we took kind of this dive to a kind of really slower pacing. So it was a bit of a roller coaster in terms of just, I kind of would like to have seen that carry on building. But when we got to episodes 9 and 10, obviously we kind of got to that wider picture story, which I was quite invested in. But not to echo what everyone else has said, really. I think the thing I really enjoyed was seeing Anisha and Nala put against each other, but not in the typical way that you would see two female characters put against each other. It wasn't over a man. It was a maternal conflict. And it was a maternal conflict because both of these women feel this maternal protectiveness over Caleb. And so I really loved that was how they were played against each other. And when we saw that at the end of episode 9, that was what I was really interested in seeing when we got to episode 10, was how that interaction was going to play out. And I thought that was probably the most interesting part of the story for me. I really, really enjoyed that. I think if I was to pick out one thing of the whole season overall, the whole show overall, that I maybe struggled with the most, I think it was the balance between silliness and seriousness. That was probably the thing I struggled with most of all. Just in terms of, there were a few moments where something could have been a real powerful moment, and then I was taken out of that moment by a quirky line that was put in there to probably kind of be more appealing to the youngsters, but to me, it just took me out of the story. And I feel like the balance wasn't quite right there. And someone commented this, I can't remember who it was talking about the use of modern slang and idioms and swearing and things in this show in particular, and how if you watch a show from the 90s, a Star Trek show from the 90s, it's almost timeless in its dialogue and its language. But by using the kind of modern terminologies in this show, it almost dates it. And that is not something I'd necessarily thought of, but when I read it, I kind of agree that, the 90s shows, even the 60s shows, in terms of the dialogue and the language used, is a timeless thing. It's kind of otherworldly, but by using kind of the time contemporary terminology, to me, it takes me out of the story. And I think that's where my struggle has been mostly with this show. There's things I really, really loved about it, but if I'm going to pick out the things that made me not love it as much as I hoped I would, it was those elements.
Well, and I'm gonna let Linda go last, but I have, from 6 to the end, I only really had one kind of just hit me in the gut moment, and not in a good way, actually, was the opening of that next episode. Between, it was a sex scene between Tarima and Caleb. I was like, again, I'm not against that, but it just, for me, what it did is everybody I've ever talked to is they've always said, they watch Star Trek with their mom or their grandparents or any of that stuff. And I'm just like, guys, y'all, and I know their target. It's, again, I'm not necessarily that target audience. I get it. But it just, for me, that one scene, it just made me feel like, why are y'all like making this harder on yourselves to try and get rid of the naysayers? You're just adding fuel to that fire. That was my, like, if I had any other little things, that was my one, like, just like, oh, why did y'all do that? I understand.
But my thing with that one is just I just don't like them like shoving that unnatural lifestyle in my face.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's just men and women together
I-
is just it's
It's
wrong.
the
It's against my
future,
religion.
John. It's the future. You gotta
It's not.
let it
It is
happen.
I
absolutely
know.
not. Adam and Steve, not Adam and Eve. I'm again it. I'm again it. I tell you.
I know. And but again, after other than that one part, and that was just my one little like moment of where you just because obviously like anyway, I can harbor on that forever. But other than that, I was very happy they did not do what one of the ideas I thought was I really thought Caleb's mom was going to be the head boss of it all. Like I had this gut
Yeah,
feeling
I
that
hated that whole idea. That theory was percolating for weeks, and I hated all of it.
yeah.
And I'm glad they did not pay it off.
I'm glad they didn't do that either. But other than that one scene and that part there, for me personally, the rest of the series went well. I really enjoyed it. I will agree. I will add with something Ellie you said about some of the lines. Again, one other. I personally felt like, and I know people loved it, and it was funny, but I do feel like I felt like they took some of they took the luster away when they had Genesis when she's like gets in the captain's chair and she says, "I gotta go pee." I'm just like, you just took this beautiful moment and just, in my opinion, just completely pissed it away. To be, because we know that's what she's striving for. She wants to be command, but other than those two little nitpicks for me, I feel like the series ended well. I'm glad they did not wrap this season up on a cliffhanger. Unfortunately, what season 2 is going to have a cliffhanger. So let's really, really, really hope that they are allowed to come back and film like they did for Discovery, a closing for that. But yeah, overall, I enjoyed the series. I wish more people would have watched it, and it's just sad to see all of the hate and vitriol that was out there for it. That basically is probably what killed this series because people were you don't want to watch it. So, but for me as a Star Trek fan, I enjoyed it. Was I their target audience? No, but I still enjoyed it, and I would never tell someone don't watch it. In fact, I'm going to say go watch it. Let me know what you think about it. So, and now we're going to let the target audience finish this discussion up.
Okay, a few things. First, I disagree about the sex scene because Star Trek has always done this thing where they over-sexualize things that don't need to be over-sexualized in order to have sex appeal. I felt like it was insulting as a viewer, like, oh, the decon chamber. Oh no, it's because we don't want to contaminate the ship, so we're just gonna get into our underwear and just rub stuff on each other, and like it's not meant to be sexual. And it's like, just have sex. Like, if that's what you want to do, if that's what you want to make it, just do it. Like, you know what I mean? Just have it in the show and then be done with it. So I appreciated the fact that like these are teenagers, early 20s. This is a thing that's going to happen. I appreciate instead of just dancing around it that they just did it and they were like, yes, this is what's happening. In order to have that sex appeal in, as opposed to trying to hide it in something else, because I hate that. I just can't stand that. That's my least favorite Star Trek trope, and it happens all the time, especially in Enterprise.
Yeah.
So I wasn't upset about that. It's definitely new for Star Trek. It was definitely a kind of a bold departure from other Trek series, but I would much rather have them have done that than what they've done in the past. Also, my biggest complaint about this show, and I wouldn't really call this a complaint, I guess it's just an observation, is that it suffers a little bit from the Gen X trying to write like how they think Gen Z talks as opposed to how we actually talk. So it definitely, there were a few moments that I was like, ooh. But I still, of all the problems to have with this show, I'm not upset about that because at least they were trying to cater to my generation, which they haven't done. They've catered to kids, they've catered to my parents' generation, but they really haven't catered to my generation. So I'm just grateful that they gave it a shot. I'm heartbroken that we're not, I wish that they had just signed it for 4 years to begin with, because we deserve to see these cadets graduate. And it's disheartening to me that a very obvious hate campaign by people who did not watch the show or watched it with the intention of tearing it apart in every way, shape, and form, kind of feels like it won out here, which is it's not
Yeah.
it's not something that I'm proud of in our fandom right now. And it's definitely cause for reflection. And I think of how this hate campaign was full of AI images and edited images of actors and things that weren't true about Star Trek and or the series. People upset about diversity and inclusion, which has always been a part of Star Trek. And I think it was very, very sad to watch the way that some of the fandom reacted to this series. And it really made me wonder what they were taking away from all of the other Star Trek series. Because when I watched those, it was full of hope for a better future and humanity coming together and a place where not only did I feel like I could belong, but everyone in my life could belong. And when I watched Starfleet Academy, I saw myself and my friends and the characters and my parents and my mentors, and I felt like I was watching kind of the Star Trek version of my life and my friends' lives. And so I just wonder what kind of Trekkie or Star Trek fan hears that and sees that people are making that connection and still hopes and prays on its downfall and fights for that. And so it's just it just makes me sad, and I do wonder about the future of Star Trek now that there's nothing in production. And I feel like now they have kind of exhausted targeting all possible audiences, and so I just wonder if they're going to try again. And it just makes me sad that there are people who would rather see Star Trek die than see people connect with it that aren't them.
Mm-hmm.
I think one thing that is, I mean, that is yep. I'm for so much of that. I'm right there with you. The thing where I put my hand up is like, I genuinely believe that it wasn't the fandom that killed it. It was bad faith actors. Now, that's not to say every Star Trek fan enjoyed the show. I mean, I have had arguments, but actual arguments as opposed to shouting at a bot. But the movie is still in production. So the movie is separate from the TV side of things. So that was the one that was announced there about 5 or 6 months ago.
It's November.
But we get a new Star Trek movie announcement every 6 months and then no follow-up.
That's fair. That is very fair. Yeah.
True.
Is this a real thing? I'm sure that every time they announce it, they have every intention of making it, but there is literally a rumor or an article announcing a new Star Trek movie every 6 months. So is this real? Like, is this actually happening?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Like, it's a real question.
No. It's a good one. The thing that gives me the thing where I think it's likely is like David Ellison came in holding up a placard that says, "I'm going to treble the amount of films that go out every year." Mm-hmm. So I think there's a bit more corporate oomph behind this one than I feel the last few announcements have had. Mm-hmm. Now that's the only. I guess that's a weird thing to take hope from, but
I believe there are actually movies in development. There's stuff that we don't know about that's actually in the works. Mm-hmm. But it does seem like the emphasis right now, at least as far as we know, is on theatrical feature films. Yeah. So the TV side, we just don't know. I don't know how that's all going to shake out.
No, we don't.
I mean, they might actually be waiting until later on in the year when the Secret Hideout Alex Kurtzman deal is really close to being up. But maybe we'll find out more at Comic-Con, since that's usually when they announce big things for Star Trek. Because Star Trek Universe panel this year will be really interesting because there's no Star Trek to talk about except there's 2 shows. But
Star Trek Day was my thought.
Star Trek Day isn't really anything they announce for movies and TV. It's really more
year, and maybe like that was my kind of I guess New York Comic-Con is where they tend to
New York and San Diego have seemed to become the place now to do all
because the media is there.
Correct.
Exactly. So.
Yeah, exactly. No, you're true. So well, so John, Sean, Ellie, Linda, thank y'all for coming with. First off, thank you for putting up with me being late because of all literally my laptop died like 5 minutes before I was about to start this. So, and I was scrambling to get another machine. So I appreciate y'all for putting up with me so I could get something back up and running again. And also just thank y'all for coming to just talk about this. I mean, I'm a little behind, but I've just, my calendar's been a little bit busy, cruise, surgery, and a bunch of other stuff. So, but we got it done. And again, I can't thank y'all enough for just coming and just sitting with me. This somewhat, still technically a newbie-ish person to this, this whole podcasting and world here, and just coming and talking with us about Star Trek. So I can't thank y'all enough. So everyone have a wonderful day, evening, depending upon which side of the world you're on, and we will be back here soon. We'll definitely be back for season 2. Talk to y'all later. Bye.
For as little as $5 per month, you can gain early access to the full ad-free versions of all interviews, plus additional exclusive content by joining Patreon.